Hello there, and welcome back to the Marvelous Mind podcast. Whatever, well, I don't know if I'll continue calling it that. I don't know what I'm doing with this, really. My upload schedule's just been shit because, to put it bluntly, it's just getting to a habit of preparing these podcast episodes whilst I do enjoy them, and I do find it quite a satisfying and fulfilling thing to do. It's just making a habit, really, of just brainstorming ideas, and I don't know exactly what sort of structure I want to go for, whether I want to highly script them out or have a more conversational sort of style to them, where I'll just sort of have a vague ideas of what I want to talk about, and then I just slap on a microphone and just start, speaking, hopefully something somewhat insightful or helpful or, inspiring to your own life. I don't know. Well, I guess what I want to do is sort of talk about topics which I find intrinsically important and things which I suppose have helped me in my own life thinking about them, and they've helped me understand, I guess, in a sort of my own path to self-knowledge or whatever that means, really. I think basically what I'm trying to say is that, what am I trying to say? What are we ever trying to say? I don't know. And I guess sort of with this podcast today, I'm going to go for a different kind of style. This could be a massive mistake. I could just be creating an absolutely horrific listening experience for you, in which case I apologise, but then again you can always just click off, that's always a choice. You can go and venture out and do something else with your time. Look at that. Reality, it faces you with just an endless number of things to do, really, and yet you pick and choose one thing in every given moment. You're choosing to, whatever. Well, that's a whole debate of, how do you choose? But I'm gonna just pass that, put that on the shelf for a bit. Maybe a future episode, several years from now, if I ever get round to it, I'll talk about that. But I guess leading to our conversation today, well, I say conversation, it's more of a monologue, where I'm talking about attention and experience. I guess one of the central questions to attention specifically is, why is it we exactly attend to one thing as opposed to the vast quantity of alternatives? In your visual scene right now, you're this sort of three-dimensional embodied being, that you feel as though you're in this sort of arena, I guess, or a room or some kind of environment, really. And there are items or things, objects you can attend to with this sort of attentional system we have. And so, for example, I can attend to my mug and I can pick it up. My hand sort of effortlessly conforms to it, and I can bring it to my lips and consume some nice coffee to caffeinate myself and sustain my drug addiction to coffee. Which, is it an addiction? I don't know. Maybe I'm just... because I quite like coffee, and I find it very easy to rationalise my use of it because of the antioxidants and the research health benefits of it. But then again, is that just the rationalisations of a drug addict? I don't know. But that's a slight tangent. But bring us back to attention, really. I guess this is there's this intuitive feel to attention as this sort of thing that foregrounds particular aspects of your experience. There is this almost, well, I wouldn't say infinite, but there is a lot of things, sensations which are occurring in the background of your experience. Say, the sensations of your left toe, for example, your left big toe. Now, as I say that, your mind, without choosing really, it sort of navigates to, what is my left toe feeling right now? Maybe you're wearing socks, maybe you're wearing shoes, maybe you're out on a walk, for example. I don't know. I don't know how the hell you listen to this thing. But attention, you weren't previously aware of your big toe or the sensations in there, or let's say the how you're breathing, for example. Are you breathing fast? Are you breathing slowly? You're not previously aware of them, but they're not. You have a sort of a subsidiary and implicit awareness of them. But attention, when we're referring to this thing, this concept, this process of attention, a central aspect of it is, and I think, obviously attention is a highly complex thing, and I'm not going to be able to, provide a comprehensive description and analysis of what it is in, however long this podcast episode happens to be. But I think we all intuitively know that this foregrounding, this thing of sort of discriminatory aspect almost of it, in the sense that you have a scarce amount of attentional resources, a scarce cognitive capacity, and therefore in order to prioritize and, I suppose, allocate this cognitive capacity in an effective manner in order to guide adaptive behavior, this attentional system, is there to make sure that you are, attending to, focusing on, disambiguating reality in an adaptive manner. If you go into a kitchen and you're really hungry, it doesn't make sense for your mind to orient and focus to the sink, and you rush over there and just turn on the tap even though you want a pizza or you're really starving, maybe you haven't eaten for several days, to go over and, attend to the sink and then turn on the water tap to, I don't know, run some water. We'll probably see that as just an obvious act of delusion. Well, how is that going to assist you on your, objective, your goal of getting food? It doesn't make sense. We think of a person who does that as just, perhaps, showing signs of psychosis. I don't know. But the point is that as you go into a kitchen and on your goal of acquiring food, this food acquisition that almost forms your cognitive frame for appraising the situation, it will likely bias you to perceive the world, the kitchen, the room, the environment you're situated in terms of what will assist you in terms of acquiring food. So your attention may orient to the fridge. You'll orient to the fridge, and you'll also maybe you feel there's almost this weird pull towards the fridge, and as you march on over and you open up the fridge door, your grip effortlessly pulls it open, and now as you get the fridge door opened, you're situated in a new environment, the fridge environment, and you're scanning around looking for whatever suits your fancy, whatever pulls you in, and your attention is always acting as this scanner, this thing that is disambiguating reality. Really, it's trying to isolate and identify the particulars in your experience which are relevant to you, which are relevant to, say, your objective of acquiring food here. You're not going to be attending to the sink, like I said. You're not going to be attending to, how light is reflecting off the fridge door, for example, or the infinite quantity of alternatives of which you could attend to. You are attending to particular things that aid you in whatever your sort of purposes in that situation happen to be. And this is, I think, this lies to the heart of the centrality of attention in our experience, really. But in the sense that is closely tethered to our agency, really, how we are meaningfully affecting our environment, how we integrating with reality to satisfy our certain goals, our certain desires, objectives. And as well, I think in some sense there is this intimate connection between attention and one's presence in a particular situation. You know, your presence where you are in the deepest, most subjective sense is where your attention lies. You know, when we think of someone as being distracted, they're not fully present in that situation. They're elsewhere in some kind of this fantasy land of their imagination. And given this role of attention in isolating what is relevant to us in our experience, in identifying what objects, what interactions would aid us in whatever objectives or goals we have, I don't think it should be controversial to say that attention precedes our most deliberate and conscious engagements with reality. And yet, even with this primacy of attention in orchestrating our conscious experience, in determining how we interact with the world and ourselves, what we look at, what we approach, what to orient towards, even with this central importance in directing experience, really, in orienting our behaviour and our cognition, you know, the dynamics of how attentional processes manifest in consciousness, I think they are deeply mysterious, despite this sort of this obviousness about it. When I say attention, you intuitively understand what I'm talking about, and like, oh yeah, I know what attention is. It's that thing that I can sort of, you know, look at when I want to read something. I'm attending to something, and I can switch between that and something else. You know, I can attend to how my left hand feels, my right hand feels. I can close my eyes, for example, and tune into, you know, how the fact that, you know, you can still know where your limbs are in space when you close your eyes. You know, you have a sense of where your body parts are in this embodied way, and this is essentially what's called proprioception. And basically, proprioception is your body's sense of itself, its movement, its action, its location. You close your eyes and you don't just forget where all your arms are. You know, you're not just gonna close your eyes, open them up, and say, "Holy shit, why is my hand there?" You know, that'd just be ridiculous. And yet, I remember having this sort of moment where I sort of realised, like, oh shit, you know, we have this sort of proprioceptive ability, this sort of, you know, sometimes described as a sixth sense. When I was reading this Oliver Sacks book, it was The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. It's, you know, he's a great writer. He talked about certain case studies of, you know, these interesting sort of like brain injuries in some cases, and there was this woman who had basically had damage to a particular region of their brain, which meant that she lost this proprioceptive capacity. You know, she lost the ability to sense where her limbs are in space, you know, in order to orient movement and whatnot. And, you know, most people aren't really tapping into this when they're moving, but, you know, in order to walk, you do need to have an awareness of where your legs are, you know, how you are impacting with the ground, and your stride speed, you know, your stride length, and all this complexity to the locomotion, the mechanics of walking. And, you know, if you simply get a damage to a particular region of your brain through injury or illness, you know, you can lose that capacity. And for this woman, it was like severely debilitating. She couldn't, you know, walk or move in the same way ever again, pretty much. And essentially, you know, to bring it back to attention, you know, you can close your eyes and you can really, or you don't have to close your eyes, but closing your eyes might help you really tap into this, your sense, your interoceptive sense of your body as, you know, situated in a particular location, a particular space. And if you attend to that, it allows you also to be more deliberate, more conscious in your movements. That could probably have, massive benefits in terms of learning new motor skills, whether, in sport or in music or whatnot. And I guess that can sort of probably lead us into a discussion between the role of attention and learning, particularly like learning motor skills, and the role of attention and essentially picking out what is, again, relevant. If you're trying to, perfect a tennis swing, really paying attention to, I don't know, I don't play tennis, so it's probably a very bad example to think of on the fly, but, let's say instead, like, learning a musical instrument like guitar, because I could probably talk about that a bit more, going through the experience of, trying to, build up pretty much more neural innovation in your fingers, so that you can move your pinky finger, with more fine precision. You don't learn that in a day. You can only really sort of develop that over several months or even years, pretty much, through, paying specific attention. And what's going on in the brain, I suppose, is that the neural circuits that are responsible for the movement of your fingers in, trying to play a particular chord or a guitar riff or whatever, as those neural circuits are reused over and over again as you practice more and more, as those neural circuits are continually used, they become strengthened and much more pronounced, more developed, and you become better, I suppose, at guitar or whatever skill you're trying to use. Yeah, and simply harnessing attention in a specific manner to isolate the particular patterns involved in, a movement, which playing an instrument is a kind of movement in some sense. If you're running, you want to get better at running. You want to, have better posture, for example. I don't know. Attending to your body, how you're using your body, whether you are using it in the quote unquote correct manner or for whatever your objective is, attending to that. Attention in a very common sense kind of way is responsible for highlighting pretty much the relevant, the important neural circuits producing the movement. And as attention sort of highlights that over and over again as you train, as you practice something, it becomes more pronounced in your brain. It becomes more habitual, more effortless. You can sort of move through these hierarchies where you can do more things without explicitly attending to them, if that makes sense. We don't, when you're learning to ride a bike, you're sort of scaling up what your unconscious mind can sort of do. So you can now sort of ride a bike and, with one hand or on your phone or whatever. You don't have to think about, the challenge of balancing on the bike and all the other nuances that are involved in riding a bicycle. You don't have to think about that. You can walk and have your phone out, be scanning your phone, and you don't have to think about how you are walking. You do that automatically because you learnt, yonks ago when you were an infant. And that is as well a particular aspect of attention, really. That, again, to the foregrounding, the backgrounding aspect of it, you can become conscious of one movement and then sort of switch to another thing, and then that other movement, what you were previously conscious of, which was previously at the foreground of your mind, becomes less pronounced. It becomes more distant, more hazy. With your vision, for example, at the very centre of your vision, it tends to be the most pronounced, that with the most specificity, you can see the most detail. And as you get to, the periphery of your vision, it becomes much foggier, much hazier. But you can sort of, in a weird sort of way, you can focus, say, on your finger right in front of you, but you can still sort of have this sort of secondary kind of attention, which is tending to say, what I'm doing right now is I have my pinky, not my pinky finger, what the fuck am I saying? My forefinger of my right hand in front of me, I'm staring at it, and how I have my left hand out, and I can have a visual focus on my finger, but I can also have a secondary attentional focus to how I'm moving my left hand in the periphery of my vision. Which, but the thing is, my vision of my left hand is not as detailed, highly fine-grained as my finger on my right hand. Another interesting feature, I think, of our visual attention is its ability to track and shift objects in our perception. You can, again, bring out your finger in front of you, and you can visually attend to your fingernail, for example, or whatever you want to look at on your finger. And as you move your finger around, you can track it. Your vision sort of becomes glued to your finger, becomes tethered to your finger, and as you move it around, it can, effortlessly, instinctually, sort of just glide along with it. It almost conforms to the finger as you move it around in your visual frame. And there's also, and interestingly as well, like, it is only when you're tracking an object as it's moving that your eyeballs can move, steadily around in your scene. If you try to, not be focusing on your finger, not be focusing on anything, you're just, sitting there looking out straight, and you try and sort of move your gaze in a sort of a horizontal manner around your scene, you'll find that you can't move it as smoothly as when you're tracking your finger. You just move in these short jumps, these what they call saccadic shifts, saccadic jumps. And you can only really hope to do these short jumps around your visual scene. You can't move it as effortlessly and glide and gracefully as when you're, say, looking at your finger. Your attention needs to be tethered to something, in order to move slowly and move gracefully, move smoothly. When it's not tethered to anything, it's jumping around, it's shifting around, it's doing these shifts pretty much. And that's an interesting feature, I think, of our phenomenological experience of attention. Now, why am I talking about all this? Why am I just, rambling about the nature of our attention? What is the point? Well, that's a good question. Well, what is the point? Not only is, in one point is that I do find it, intrinsically interesting to talk about these things, but there's also a side point, which I think is clear to see, of the central importance of understanding how you're using your attention and becoming more aware of how attention is manifesting in your consciousness, because I think it can help you orient your life in a more adaptive manner. It can help you appraise, okay, what are my goals, what are my objectives, how am I utilising attention, this engagement with the world, in an adaptive manner to satisfy those goals. It can make you recognise the sort of the maladaptive ways you're using attention, how your attention perhaps is being parasitised by, certain addictions, or, a phone addiction, for example. That's, I think, the most primary one, in which afflicts a lot of people, including myself. The notification system. It's so obvious that the notification system is so detrimental for long bouts of focus. You think about it, you're just there thinking, just alone with your thoughts, and then bang, this thing, and you don't have a choice really but to orient to the phone when you hear a ding or whatever notification sound you've got. And I think becoming more aware of these maladaptive aspects of attention can help, awareness, I suppose, understanding of that they're there, can put you on the path really to sort of trying to reduce the things in your life which are, causing you to attend to the world in, a negative sort of way, a way that is not assisting you for whatever you want to do. And I don't think you need to, have years of meditative training. You don't need to go to some, cave for, several months, just listening and feeling, the rhythm of your breath to become more introspective, to become more curious about your attention, about your own mind, about your own experience of reality, I think all you need to do is simply reflect. And I know that sounds just really, just reflect on your mind, but you do it all the time. You're just not aware of it when you do it, really. When you hurt yourself, when you stub your toe, and you go, I'm in pain, you feel that, throbbing pain or whatever, your toe or whatever. Now you're thinking of your toe again, look at that. It all comes full circle. But you do recognise you're in pain. Whilst you're not probably thinking in your head, there is a pain going on. You are aware of you're in pain. But the point of meditative practice, or really becoming more, mindful of your experience, I think that can certainly help alleviate those physical symptoms of pain, because you can always become curious about how the pain is occurring, pretty much. There is a certain experience of the pain itself, and then there's also that side to your experience where you're representing the pain experience and always becoming curious about how it's feeling. And I think that's really at the core of what mindfulness is. It's becoming more attentive to attention. It's not just simply hearing, but it's becoming an active listener. You're actually trying, you're not just, seeing, you're, actually, watching. You're becoming a careful examiner of your own experience. It's not just washing over you, but you're actually taking it apart and trying to understand it and trying to reflect on it, trying to pick out the salient details. This careful examination, this is mindfulness. And all it is just a state of becoming more aware of experience. That's it. And it's not complex. It's really, people talk about meditation in these woo-woo terms. It's like, you reach the ultimate state of consciousness. Like, what a waste of time just listening to the breath. But they don't understand, the utility of meditation, the utility of deliberate awareness of experience, deliberately participating in experience. That practice can reveal aspects of the mind which were, often just simply concealed from the purview of consciousness. It can sort of bring things which we were only aware of implicitly to the foreground of perception, and you become more curious about your experience, your perception. And there are so many things that are staring at us right in the face, and yet we so frequently ignore them, and yet simply a small bout of reflection can really inspire a sense of awe, really, I think, at the complexities of the mind, the curiosities of cognition, which, we so frequently ignore them, but they're there. And, our best science still doesn't understand, how do you shift your attention? That, as simple as that. If a Martian came down from, Mars, obviously, or maybe, I don't know, maybe he went on a detour and, what am I talking about? If a Martian came out and asked you, little hairless ape, how do you shift your attention when you look at one thing and then you switch to looking at a different thing? How do you generate that shift? How do you answer that sort of question? It's a weird sort of question. You're just like, well, I'll just do it, But you have no idea, really, how do you articulate that? How do you articulate how you shift your attention? How do you articulate how you raise your right arm? I just do it, I look at my arm and I think in my head, I want to raise this limb, and then you do it. And that's how I do it. Or then the Martian will be like, he's probably be a little bit perplexed by this sort of statement, and he'll probably ask you, well, how do you think of the intention to raise your arm? That's a weird question as well. Where do you think, and it gets into the question of where do our thoughts come from? When we're doing a really, horrible maths question, say in primary school, secondary school, whenever you're doing some problem solving or whatever, and it's really difficult and you don't understand it, you're just trying to wrap your head around it, and then suddenly the insight moment comes. Suddenly the solution just becomes clear, becomes explicit. It comes to the foreground of your mind, and you're like, yeah. That insight moment, that eureka moment we talk about, where the hell does it come from? I don't think we can really answer that question, but it's one of the perennial problems, really, of, well, cognitive science and philosophy writ large. And it's fascinating, it's deeply fascinating, and I can't, because really, like, the insight question of, how can you account for why you had an insight and just understood the solution at that particular moment, as opposed to 5 seconds before or 5 seconds after. You can't account for that. And the same way, you can't account for how you shift your gaze over from one thing to another, how you raise your arm, you just know how to do it. You have a procedural understanding of how to do it, but you don't have a propositional, a linguistic understanding of these aspects of our being, our, cognition. And it's very strange, isn't it? It's just, it's there, Like, if I ask you a question, think of a movie. This is something that, Sam Harris often does when he's doing his little arguments about free will. He'll say, oh, well, think of a movie, and you'll think of a movie, any old movie or whatever. Then I'll just invite you to think about, well, why did you pick that particular movie as opposed to the countless, almost infinite number of alternatives? And it's weird. It's like, well, I don't know. You can sort of invent a sort of a story for why you did it, but is that story really valid, or is that you just saying, oh, well, I watched that movie last night? Well, why did you watch that movie last night then? Why? Why did you pick that movie? Why did you do it? These decisions, we go about our life making decisions all the time. Just always, our life is just an endless cycle of decisions. But yet, how do we make those decisions? When we have a thought, when we have a desire just sprung up in our consciousness, where the fuck does it come from? I don't know. And I don't think you know, really. Can we ever know? Does it make sense to sort of to know where our thoughts come from, to be acquainted with whatever is producing this conscious experience? It's a difficult question, really. Like, to bring it to, becoming, having an understanding of how you shifted your attention from one thing to another, to have an understanding, really, of how you are generating that movement. I guess you would have to be acquainted with everything that's going on in the brain during that shift of attention, with the complexity of, whatever neurotransmitters are being dumped out, whatever neural circuits are firing. And I don't think it's even comprehensible, really, to understand all of that when you're generating a movement. Because, there is a lot of complexity, really, in the raising of your right arm. And yet we're not attuned to that complexity. We're not attuned to whatever's going on at the acetylcholine receptors in your muscles and whatever. We're not aware of that. And and it's, probably useful, it's probably adaptive that we aren't aware of that. It's probably adaptive that we aren't aware of, our kidney function, our liver function, because it's simply too complex to really, for our conscious machinations, did I pronounce it right? I don't know. It's not practical, really. How would you use your conscious attention to, modulate your kidney function? Like, I don't have a fuckiest idea how my kidney works, quite frankly. I'm just, graceful that every morning I wake up and it's still chugging along. But I think the point I'm trying to make is that there's so much to our cognition. There's so much that is generating our cognition that we don't see, that we aren't acquainted with. And it really gets to the question of like how much can you know about your own cognition? How much can you introspect and actually understand? And how much of your cognition, how much of your thoughts, your mind that you can't ever hope to understand. You know, the reasons for these sort of aspects of your mind are simply hidden permanently, or maybe perhaps not permanently. Perhaps you might be able to gain insight into, the causes of your particular thought patterns through, achieving an altered state of consciousness through meditation or a psychedelic use. Particularly with psychedelic use, people do report having profound introspective insights into their own life, how they're orienting themselves. They sort of pierce through their self-deception, which I think is, I think a lot of people, I think we all do in many ways, deal with self-deception of some sort. For instance, say if you have an addiction to something or another, to justify that decision to, partake in that addiction, you'll bullshit yourself almost. You'll sort of rationalise that behaviour as, oh, this is okay because X, Y, Z. And, that is self-deception. And, when you enter into an odd state of consciousness, like an acid trip or whatever, many people do report to sort of having the reality of their self-deceptions and the ways they are bullshitting themselves. It comes to the foreground of their perception. The ways you are bullshitting yourself is often simply in the background. It's often repressed. It's often just sort of stuffed away in the the back of the cupboard. Don't look at that. But when you're in an altered state, you can't do that. It's all washing over you, and you can't help but see it, and can't help but and you can talk. This can often be distressing. It can spiral someone into a negative trip. Seeing the ways they're bullshitting yourself is hardly a comforting experience. But it can be a cathartic one. It can be a useful one. It can be an instructive experience, which puts you on a more adaptive path afterwards. But to relay that to attention, all it is, an insightful trip is simply, or an insightful experience, full stop, is an experience that sort of brings to the foreground of your perception the solution. It brings to the foreground, what is relevant, what is, going to help you, I guess, if you want to think about it that way. And I see I've been talking for quite a while, so I think I might round off our conversation of attention and experience, which has perhaps just been a bit of a ramble about consciousness, I suppose. I don't know. I hope it's been somewhat insightful and helpful, maybe. I don't know. Or maybe it's just been horrific. You might have stopped listening several minutes ago, or maybe after just a few seconds of listening, which I don't blame you for. But if you are listening, wow, thank you. It's quite the compliment that you would sit down and listen to me ramble for this long. I often have a lot of self-doubt about what I'm producing, whether it's even, coherent. I struggle to listen to my old podcasts, even though it's like, I do find it interesting, sort of, this is what I was thinking about, 5-6 months ago, and I think that will continue to be interesting as I get older, to sort of step back, and it's almost like stepping back into a certain stage of my life, really. But I mean, and we all do that really. When you look at old photos and you think back to memories from your childhood, from your adolescence, and you sort of participate in that period of your life, and you participate in, what were you thinking in that moment of your life? What were your goals, your anxieties, and you can sort of step into who you were at that particular stage of life and embody yourself and represent what sort of goals and dreams you had. And yeah, there's something very nostalgic and just satisfying about thinking about the past, isn't it? And often it can be very tempted to look at the past with rose-tinted glasses and ignore all the aspects of the past that were there, all the negatives, but we don't, it depends on your disposition, I suppose, how predisposed you are to thinking the past in positive terms as opposed to negative terms, you know. But I don't particularly look at my childhood in that way. I mean, some people do have, terrible childhoods, but I think generally, most people look at their childhood and put on those rose-tinted glasses, and indeed, I mean, childhood is an exciting time of profound novelty, and you're there just first forming your models of the world, your models of people, of who you are, and what, yeah, who are you? It's that question that we sort of define for ourselves through our actions in some ways. We're continually developing who we are through, perhaps what we are tending to. What are we if we are not what we are tending to? It's our central means by which we interact with the world, by which we do anything. And yeah, it's really at the heart of your conscious experience. And I guess one way of really understanding who you are as a person or as a conscious entity is through understanding what are my patterns of attention? What do I commonly, habitually attend to in my environment? And I guess that's sort of all it is just having greater insight, introspection into, how you are thinking, your cognition really. Because a lot of it is habitual. A lot of it goes without us thinking. We often stumble through our days, barely giving second thought to what we're doing. We just sort of just do it. It takes a certain degree of effort to overcome the friction of stepping back and looking at your experience and looking at your attention and assessing how you are, attending to the world, attending to your interactions with that world as well. And yeah, I've been rambling for quite a while. I don't know whether this style of podcast format where I'm not really as much reading off a script, but rather just thinking through them in the moment. And it could come across as far more tangential, far more disorganized, and I apologize if it does seem like a disorganized experience. But it's certainly, well, I don't know whether it's easier for me, whether I personally, I think I do enjoy producing in this format more because it's, I don't know, it's just something about just riffing into a microphone about some topic or another, just, it appeals to me. It's easier, I guess, than, sitting down and producing, 5,000 words or whatever of specific, actively thinking about what you're having to write. That's quite a time-consuming thing, but it's satisfying when you do it. But it can come across, I guess, maybe it's less authentic. It depends how you do it, really. But I guess I want to use the podcast format in a more, well, conversational manner, where, I'm thinking on the fly. I'm sort of trying to sort of think through these ideas with you, for you, and yeah, because I don't understand. I know fuck all. Like, I don't understand this shit. I feel like I understand enough to sort of produce something of relative utility for you to listen to. But I'm by no means an expert on any of these topics. And I want to make that explicit. Do not take what I say as a gospel. I am very much a work in progress, and we're always a work in progress, really, in a fundamental sense. But even with my, ineptitude and inexperience, I hope this has been useful. I hope it has inspired a bit more interest, a bit more curiosity in how you're using attention currently in your day-to-day experience of reality. I hope it's sort of inspired a bit of fascination about your own consciousness, about where the fuck do your thoughts come from? That simple question. I find it endlessly fascinating sort of to speculate. I'll sort of think something, and you can step back and be like, why the hell did I think that? It can, maybe it can be quite scary, because you'll start, if you have a bad thought, or a thought that might reflect badly on who you are, it can sort of, that act of psychoanalyzing yourself in a way can, be insightful, but it can perhaps reveal aspects of yourself which you'd rather not reveal, but it's there, and you can't ignore it, and you got to just confront it, be an adult, and yeah. So I think I will conclude there. This, wow, 47 minutes, bloody hell. That's crazy. Well, yeah, is it crazy? I don't know. What is crazy? Right, thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope I haven't bored you too much. But if I have, I should say I sincerely apologise, but if you got it this far, and unless you skipped it, but if you got it this far and you're like, oh, that was boring, well, I'm sorry, you could have just clicked off and done something else with your time. There are other things to do than listen to this really niche podcast, which has only got 20 subscribers on YouTube. You don't have to do this. You can do other things. Go for a walk. I don't know. There's a endless possibility. But yeah, I apologise for these rambles and these tangents, but that's just what you're gonna have to deal with. That's just what we do here. So you're gonna have to suck it up. And if you're not happy, do something else with your time. I don't know. Okay, goodbye.